All right, let's do this. Well, it's 10 a.m. Thanks so much for everyone coming. Vivian, Katrina, and obviously we might have some more jump on, but we're going to get started on time because we got a lot to cover. So excited to be here. My name is John Wood. I have been connecting with Sam and reading his books now for over 3 years. And this is actually a very exciting uh, month in the explanation. That's with Sam Knellard. There he is right there. He has a series called The Explanation of Seven Books. And the website was actually started, if you can believe it, 10 years to the month. It's been 10 years since the explanation.com was started. So it's been an amazing journey. Sam had just finished inventory of the universe, and he decided to start the website. And the cool thing is, if you don't know, so now Sam is working on his 11th book. His 10th book is out right now, Mind, Body, Problem Solved. You can find this on Amazon.com or in many other places. But in case you don't know, Sam's working on his 11th book, and every week he comes out with a new chapter in his new book. So if you aren't subscribed, definitely subscribe. You can sign up for his newsletter, which is really the next chapter in the new book. Okay, so pretty cool. I didn't know that at first. I thought he was just writing all these posts every week, and I was like, man, this guy, he really writes a wealth of very deep knowledge and information. But every week, it's a new chapter in his new book. So definitely check that out. Definitely sign up if you haven't already. Um, I think we're going to dive in right now to a few questions. I believe Katrina had a question we want to start off with. Um, I can, I'll just mention the question here, but just for housekeeping purposes, if anyone has a side question or something they want to ask specifically, there is a chat on the right-hand side of the Zoom call here where you can post your questions, and then I can kind of filter through it and just say, hey, you're next. And so I'll be kind of your moderator, and Sam's obviously hosting the call, and we'll respond to the questions. So the first question is from Katrina. She did say, I've been hearing a lot about different ministers, speakers talking about humans being made in the image of God. Unfortunately, they give no content. They don't give much content about what that really means to be made in the image of God. I understand that we, men and women, both possess different mentalities of this image. I understand preeminence versus eminence to a degree. However, can you explain the difference between men being in his image and women being in his image? Um, Katrina, do you want to maybe add a few details? Does that sound about right? Or you tell us.
Yes, that sounds about right. What I'm noticing is it's very trendy, I guess, for people to say this, that we are made in God's image.
It
Sam,
is.
you are the only one that really clarified for me that men and women separately have pieces of his image, and while together we are closer to his image, especially with marriage. So I really want to understand what exactly do men have and what exactly do women have. I think from origin of a woman, I can understand women more clear. Men, I see some things like self-control and different things like that, but I'm not really getting a good understanding of, to be honest, men. Women, I understand more than men when it comes to the image of God. So,
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for that question, and welcome to the three other ladies that have joined us as well. Um, we definitely have more ladies than men. Okay. Um, yeah, just let me make a few comments before I get into this first question. First of all, yeah, it's been 10 years and it's been quite a run since this first started. Um, I started. I'm just going to give you a wee bit of background here. In the mid '90s, the church that I had pastored for about 25 years just broke apart. We had a number of ministers, high-ranking ministers in the church, who didn't believe in the doctrines that the church was preaching anymore, and they wanted to preach something else. And there was really a whole mix-up within the church. And at that time, I was supposed to be transferred from Paris, where I had pastored for 20 years, and I was going to be transferred to the United States. And for different reasons and whatever, we decided to part company. I decided not to go to the United States. I was actually, I mean, to be right up front, in a bit of a burnout, having pastored for that long, and I needed a bit of a rest. And so I ended up taking that rest. And then with all of this mix up in the church, I, you know, I mean, I believed that there's absolutely no problem in there, but I had to figure it out in my head. Had I been preaching stuff that was incorrect, or was I preaching stuff that was correct, and these other guys are going off board? And so that's when I decided, well, look, I'm going to do a study. I'm going to start from the beginning, Genesis. That's the beginning of the Bible, and I'm going to see what it says. But the way I did the study, of course, was going back directly into the biblical Hebrew, because I had some Hebrew background. I started learning Hebrew when I was about 11 years old in South Africa, and I'd lived in Israel for a couple of years. So I can understand it, I can read it, and I can work with the language with dictionaries. I can't speak it anymore, although I can understand a wee bit. But anyway, to cut a long story short, so I got back into Genesis and the biblical Hebrew. And, when you're doing that, I like to take notes. And then the idea germinated that I write a book. And I thought I'd write one book and it'd be done. Well, the one book actually ended up turning into the 7-book series, and the 7-book series only covers Genesis 1 through Genesis 3. I wanted to get to the end of Genesis 3 because I realized that the entire plan of God is there in those first 3 chapters. It's in the figurative understanding of the biblical Hebrew. And that's what the problem is. Everybody understands it. And this is where we can look at the image of God. In the image of God, we look at that and like the breath of life, we take the breath as literally as the breath, and an image sort of almost like a picture, etc. And we forget that, well, we forget, or we don't know that behind all of that, God's showing us something. Okay. And we could go into the parables. Of course, people take the parables literally. And of course, Christ was teaching them lessons through the parables. And there are a lot of things that are hid, as Paul said. There are mysteries that people who just look at the material part of it, at the text part of it, are not going to see. And the double problem is that when we translate it, the translators didn't see any of this figurative part, and they only translated it from a physical point of view, from a material point of view. And hence, they doubly hide what the biblical Hebrew says. So we run into extra problems there. So anyway, to cut a long story short, yeah, that's what I started doing. I wrote, actually, the first 3 books don't even talk about God at all, because I wanted to write from the point of view of somebody who didn't believe in God. And I wanted to show them why we have to get into the Bible, because that would be the first question. Why are you using the Bible? I mean, what's the importance of the Bible? So I had to get into that and um, show why we need to do that. And I also had to show why science, religion, and philosophy don't have answers. They don't have the answers, and why we have to use another, science, religion, philosophy, and personal ideas, observations, experiences, because that's the thing today. A lot of people want to experience God, through an after-death experience, through voices or apparitions, or who knows, dreams, or who knows what else. But those things don't give us the basis. And so we have to show that we need a real basis. And what is that real basis? Because there are many sacred books. There are dozens and dozens of sacred books. Why the Bible? So I had to show all of this from a non-godly point of view, and that's what these a lot of these books, the first books, are about. And then get into Genesis 1 through 3. And then after that got done, I realized that, that's when I wrote the 7 keys to master biblical Hebrew, so people could understand that point of view. And then COVID set in, and I noticed nobody was talking about COVID from a biblical point of view. And so I wrote one article, and that article turned into it was the first article of about 20 or 30 that turned into the book Evidence for Bible Wisdom. That one. And then I got into finally, and this is the one I really wanted to get into, is the mind-body problem. What is the mind and consciousness and all of that? Because that, I could tell, was a theme running through the entire Bible. Okay, and that sort of brings us up to where we are now, and is the answer, or at least part of the answer, to Katrina's question about the image of God. Because, as I said, we think about image. I mean, I'm going to be right up front with you here. I remember writing an article when I was, I don't know, a sophomore in college, where we were studying theology. And I wrote this article, and I thought this was the answer. That God has hands, we have hands. God has a voice, we have a voice. God smells, God drinks wine, and he enjoys a wine. It sounds a bit strange, but that's what he says in the Bible. And we enjoy wine, and that's the image of God. And solved. Well, all of that's true. All of that's true, but that is not the image of God, by a long shot. All right. And right now in the book, Transformation, Transform Your Mind, Upgrade Your Life, I'm going into this whole thing again, differently than in the book Mind Body Problem Solved. It's this book is the intention of this book is going to, I still don't have the final bylines, but it's going to be something like Biblical Psychology 101, because that's the idea, is to show that if we can't understand psychology, if we don't get into the Bible, and it's 101. So we've got to start at the very, very beginning. And the very beginning is the consciousness and mind, which people they don't have a clue what it is. Everybody knows that it's there, and they've got all sorts of exercises, psychological exercises, to improve the consciousness and mind, some of which are helpful. We're not going to throw everything out. They are good, they are helpful, but you cannot, how can you mend or repair like a printing press if you don't know what it's supposed to do? Or if you don't recognize what it is. If you don't have experience to see, oh, this is a printing press, how are you going to repair it? And that's the problem with consciousness and mind. We're trying to repair it, but we don't know what it is. I mean, this doesn't make any sense. In one sense, it doesn't make any sense. Okay. So this is where we start off here. And with regard to the image of God is, in one word, it is neshama. Okay, because humans are the only ones with neshama, and with two Bible verses we can show that. Genesis 2 verse 7, the breath of life that was given by God, that was blown into the first human. And the second verse would be in Joshua 11, I think it's verse 11 or 14, I don't know, but where it shows that only humans have neshama. Animals do not have neshama. That's where, Joshua was ordered by God to kill everything with neshama, and where they kept the animals. So by deduction, animals do not have neshama. So that is the one thing that sets us apart, right? Because we do have ruach, and ruach, the spirit, works directly with the neshama, consciousness and mind. And I'm going to show, and we've already shown, how they work together. I'm not going to go into any of this right now, but the point I want to make is animals do have ruach. Now, their ruach doesn't work like our ruach, and I'm not going to explain that either right now. Okay, but so we can't, but the point being that we can't say ruach differentiates us, although it does, but I can't say that because somebody could just answer, well, they've got ruach, we've got ruach. So how can you say it differentiates? Okay, well, so I'm going to leave that aside for now. But when it comes to neshama, there is absolutely no doubt about it. We humans are the only ones with neshama. Right? So that makes us, and it says very clearly in a number of verses, the neshama, the breath of the Almighty. So it's not just any breath, it's God's breath. All right. And so what we have here is God sharing literally that part of him only with humans. And then when we understand that, of course, then we have to understand what neshama is. And neshama, the best translation that the King James translators came up with, is the word inspiration. Right? And there we all immediately get into the metaphysical, the non-physical part that scientists have great difficulty with. Where we get into an impossible domain for them, right? And from there, I go on to explain what neshama is, based always on what the Bible says, and the 5 elements that neshama attributes to us. And those 5 elements are, first of all, the fact that we can have a purpose. Then secondly, that we can reason, how we function as human beings, and then how we rule, and how we socialize. That's not,
and Sam, I was, just for clarity's sake, so everyone even understands kind of the magnitude of what you just said. So Sam has distinguished right there, when someone has neshama, and that's only God and humans, because we're of course made in his image. God creates, so humans create. But those are the distinctions right there that separate humans from animals, from angels, from everything created in the whole universe, is the ability to create as God creates, the ability to imagine. He said social, those things. Can you say those things again, Sam? Because those are the things, the ability to reason.
Yeah.
Like you'll never see an animal reasoning. Um, they haven't made many advancements in technology over thousands of years, to say the least.
Yeah.
So this is huge because as humans, I really feel like we take this for granted because we're like, oh yeah, we do this all the time. But this is something unique
It's
in
unique.
all the universe to only humans and
Okay,
obviously God.
I need to make I need to add a little parentheses here because the Bible is the story of humankind. All right, that's the key. It starts out with the creation of humankind, and it ends with the end result of what God is doing and why He created humankind. The book is starts there and it ends there. There's going to be a second volume. What happens when we all become kings and priests in God's kingdom? All right, we don't know. It's going to be incredible, that we know, but exactly the details as compared to what we do know about the human life, we're kind of in the dark. Why did God leave us in the dark? Because we don't even understand how humanity lives. We certainly, if He gave us that, that would be too much. It would be way out. So, but what I do want to add is this. The Bible doesn't, it talks a little bit about angels. And in fact, G asked a question that ties in a little bit with that, which maybe we'll get to. But the point is that I think this is my thinking right now, all right, that angels do have neshama. Right? Because they can do everything that we do. In other words, they have purpose. They were created beings. They have purpose. They do socialize. They do rule. They have rulership as well. They do have a way of functioning. I mean, Lucifer, he functioned the wrong way and he got the results. So, to a certain extent, I would say that angels do have neshama. But that's why I say on earth, humans on earth, just to make that well, even just by saying humans alone have neshama in the sense that we humans, I'm comparing that with every other life form on earth. I'm not comparing humans with angels in that sense.
So getting back to Katrina's question, so she was just wondering the distinctions. What would be the distinctions of an image bearer that is female and an image bearer that
Okay,
is male?
good. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about angels and humans. Okay, because with angels, there's actually no distinction. In Matthew 22, Christ said, "You don't understand the scripture." He said, because forget whether it was the woman who had 7 husbands or the husband who had 7 wives. No, anyway, one or the other. And they said, whose wife will she be? Or something. Anyway, the point being, Christ said, you don't understand because they will be like the angels, and there is no marriage or whatever. So there is no differentiation between genders in that sense. And when it comes to angels, we don't. The Bible doesn't talk about genders or sexes or whatever. Okay, so why did God make humans with the two genders? Well, first of all, what I always like to try and do is come back to the big picture. In other words, what is God doing? What is the overall framework that we've got to be able to answer this question in? And one of the things that God wants to do is, He said, go and multiply, go and procreate. So, in order to procreate, we could have a male that sort of, I don't know, spits out a baby or something, or a woman who spits out a baby. I suppose we could do that. But that's not the way he decided. He decided to make a male and female and to procreate. Now, of course, there are many other reasons why there's a male and a female, because he wanted them to take care of children. He wanted them to bring up children. We could ask the question also, why does it take 18 or 20 years to bring a baby to maturity? Most animals don't even see their parents, or are not even brought up by their parents. So, because all of this fits in with the way God is working with us. God doesn't create his children with a snap of his fingers. He takes time to create his children. So that's why we have to take time. It's patience and it's learning and whatever. And God wants us to learn a lot of those lessons. The other reason that I would say that we have a male and female is because within God's framework, is there hierarchy? Hierarchy in the sense of one person above another person, or responsible. When I say above, the higher you get from a biblical point of view, the higher you get, the more responsibility you have to care for the ones under you. Now, that's not the way hierarchy works necessarily today or in government. The higher you get, the more you think you're great. And of course, that's exactly the opposite of what Christ said. He said, the higher you get, the more you shall be the servant. Right? So that's what we're talking about, hierarchy. And there is automatically, when you have millions and millions of people, which is the world population, or when you have just 5 people or 2 people or 3 people, which would be a family organization, you've automatically got to have somebody in charge. You cannot run things on where everybody's equal. But once again, we have to keep in mind that everybody in charge means that the one who's got the biggest responsibility, the one who's the highest in the rank, let's say, and I will use the word in authority, has the most responsibility for those under him. Right? So this is the thing. God needs us to learn what authority is and what hierarchy is, because we're going to be with this for all of eternity. And that's why he had to have he had to have the male and female and have hierarchy, and the male has got the preeminence in a marriage. But once again, that doesn't mean, I'm the great big boss. That means that I'm the servant, etc. I'm not necessarily going to go into that side. And of course, there we have, as the person who's the leader, that a leader has to have certain qualities. Those qualities we see in a male from a point of view of just physical force, just physical strength, and the voice, for instance, et cetera. Once again, I'm not going to go into all of the details about this. Okay, I'll say it. Men can get very angry and can get very upset. Once again, does God get very angry? Yeah, God does get very angry. Christ went into the temple and he upset all the tables. He was in a controlled, I don't know whether the term is right, but in a controlled rage. He was very upset at what they were doing in God's house, and he showed it. And he never sinned, so there's nothing wrong there in what he did. That doesn't mean we should go in and throw over money changes and all of that. I'm not saying that, but you understand what I am saying. So in order to have that role, men need certain qualities. Now, what was the role of the woman? Well, the role of the woman is the mother. Right? And in order to be a mother, you have to have certain motherly qualities. And that's what women are equipped with. God equipped them physically for that. And God equipped them also mentally and spiritually more in that way. So what we end up having here is we have the, let's say, the strength and the leadership on the male side, and we have this warmth and this sociability, this caringness on the female side. And what I would say is that God in Genesis 1 there, he says he made man and woman in his image. God has one image, and that one image is composed of both the male qualities and the female qualities. If I put it in two words, once again, I don't know whether I'm choosing the right words, but you understand what I'm going to say here. I'm going to put strength for the male, and let's say warmth or support for the woman. So God has both the strength and the leadership and the warmth and the teaching and the support of the female. He has all of those qualities, and this is important, in the right dosage, in the right amount. And when I say in the right amount, that means that he knows how to use it when certain circumstances arise. In other words, he knew that when just prior to the flood, Noah's flood, that it was a total mess, and he intervened in a controlled punishment. It was punishment. It was maybe anger, a righteous anger, but it was controlled, and God knew what he was doing, and it was the proper use of his leadership, which would be, let's say, more on the male side. And then on other times, as Psalms goes into this quite a bit, about David who's calling on God's mercy and God's, love. We would say, well, the flood isn't love. Well, actually, the flood is love, but it's a tough love. Whereas the mercy that David was calling on was a real mercy because he was in tight spots. So then God's love takes on this other color, the female color, let's say. So he knows how to use all of these qualities at the right time. And that's when I think we get into this whole question of the two become one, the male and the female become one, because God wants the male to learn from the female and the female to learn from the male. And so that the oneness is actually the two coming together. So that's how I would sort of answer that particular question. Katrina,
right.
what does that sort of help?
Yes, that helps a lot. It makes it more clear. And one thing that is concerning is how much the world, maybe just in the United States, but I'm pretty sure everywhere, takes out that male role. They want to always decrease how or make us look at men as being less valuable, but it's so important, so.
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually I did a podcast yesterday. It was the first one as a guest. And that was the one point that came up, is that we're putting males down in this society. We're crushing males. Probably a lot of things I could say, and you have to be sort of careful because you make a statement and you don't want to take that statement out of context either. Males, unfortunately, today are not assuming their responsibilities. particularly as fathers. And I would say, unfortunately, that a primary context of that is in the United States. The prison population, and I don't have the statistics, but the prison population is fundamentally people coming from fatherless families. A boy can be brought up by a mother until the boy reaches between about 10. Why 10? Because up until the age of 10, the mother has more physical strength than the boy. And the mother can take the boy and sit him down, and she's still big. And I mean, there are some boys that at 10 years old, they're already sort of monstrous and whatever. So I'm talking in very general terms here. But if a mother hasn't established a relationship with her son by the age of 10, and once again, I'm just using that as a general age. Beyond then, the boy can just say, "Mom, forget it," and go and do his own thing. Now, you can't do that with your dad. A boy cannot do that with his dad, not until he's a lot older. So that's once again the male responsibility, because that's when the kids go bad. That's when you find the kids out at night, all night, but today between the ages of around 12 years old. They're roaming the streets. I don't know if you know what's happening in New Caledonia. It's a part of France. The place is in insurrection. Literally, it's an insurrection, and they're kids out on the streets. And of course, this is what happens in the States as well. It's not just the States. It's not just France. It's elsewhere. And where are the fathers? We've got more divorce, more single parents, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the need for fathers. So yes, fatherhood is being put down. And the other thing that I have to say here is that women's rights have gone too far. Women want to rule the world now. They want to wear the pants. Once again, I'm being very general in what I'm saying, because I'm not saying every woman is like that or every man is like that. Okay. I'm just saying that we're just hearing more and more of this. Now, of course, with the Me Too movement, there are men, you see these men who are supposed to be the leaders and who are supposed to be taking care of the ones under them. They're doing exactly the opposite. So there's a reason why this Me Too movement and the female movements have gone on, but they want to take over everything now. And once again, I'm maybe exaggerating what I'm saying, but basically what we're doing here is we've gotten out of kilter. The men that should be ruling properly are now put down here, and the women who should be supporting properly are up here. And so we've sort of inverted the roles. Now, in some cases, with single women, I mean, I know some single women who have done incredibly with their kids. And so it's not to say, and what I am not saying is that that women can't be leaders, because we have to be careful there. Women are leaders, but they have to and should be leaders and teachers and whatever. Women occupy and do extremely well in those situations. As men, men. Nurses, male nurses. There are male nurses that are fabulous at what they do. So there's the personal side to it, and then of course there's the general the general side to it as well. But yeah, we are putting men down, and we do have to build men up. You can't build a man up or a woman up if that woman doesn't, if that man or that woman, if they don't accept their responsibilities and act accordingly. Do you see what I mean? There's no
I
point in,
I think what I hear you saying, Sam, and correct me if I'm wrong, but um, I hear you saying that God has designed a man and a woman uniquely. However, they're both, of course, made in the image of God. But we have to, as both a man and a woman individually, accept how God has designed us, accept our role as a man, accept our role as a woman. And when we do that, then we're truly empowered to be all that we're literally created to be.
that's that's well put, very well put.
Yeah.
Okay, I would, and here's where I'm going to add what you just said. In the image of God, why are we all, no matter woman or male, in the image of God? It's not because we're a male or a female. It's because we all have neshama, and that is what
Exactly.
makes us equal, and that is the
Right.
equalizer. Okay, because males are not better than females, and females are not better than males. In God's eyes, we are all equal. Okay.
And this is what I love most about God, because of course God doesn't see the outer man. He doesn't see skin color, he doesn't see culture, he doesn't see, what he sees is of course the inner.
Right.
And of course that inner is our neshama. And as long as the breath of life, which makes us
Mhm.
bear God's image. And so as long as we have breath in our lungs as a human, we're made in God's image.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that, gives us our individuality, our personalities, our characters, etc. But the neshama is the common denominator, and that neshama is God's neshama. That is what allows us to become His children. But it's that same neshama that gives us the ability to socialize. In other words, to be a family on the physical level. And basically, the neshama gives us all the qualities that God has. That's what He's done. He's transmitted His qualities. He reasons. God's got a purpose. God reasons. God has a way of functioning. He rules and He socializes. And He has transmitted all of those qualities to us here on earth. But He has given us free will. And that free will, we exercise it. And the free will basically today is being exercised to a negative tendency. And the whole plan of God is to turn that negative use of free will into a positive use of free will. That's the beauty of the plan of God, is how He is going to do that for not just a fraction of the people on earth, but for every single person who has ever walked the face of this earth. And that's God's plan. And when you think about that, it is, how are you going to do this? And that is what, I mean, to me, I just have goosebumps just saying this, because it's just so incredible. It's absolutely unbelievable. Right? And that's what I've just said. This is what the Bible explains. And so when churches talk, they talk about our doctrines are 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so those are your doctrines. But what's God's plan? Why are we here? What's God doing? It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
I'm, yeah.
Well,
I'm blown away by the whole thing, frankly. It's just incredible. And I don't understand. I'll tell you right, frankly, I don't understand why I understand this. But it's just unbelievable. Anyway, John, what else do we have here?
Yeah.
We just got through one question.
Thank you. That was a very some answers have a longer explanation than others, as to be expected about literally our very identity, the image of God. Thank you so much, Sam. So we have another question. I don't. We can either go to Katrina or G. You tell me,
Yeah,
Sam.
I think we'll stay with Katrina because I think her second question, I forget exactly what it was, but it's somewhat related.
Yeah, I'll just read it here super quick, and Katrina, you can comment if that sounds about correct. But she said, if an organization that has unconverted
Oh,
people
okay.
living in a safe and peaceful space was to build their bylaws to be God-centered, would they then perhaps focus on the Ten Commandments or go further, or um, just an interesting question if an organization had unconverted people, but were living in a safe and peaceful space, will they build their bylaws on God's Ten Commandments or perhaps go further in something else? Um, Katrina, do you want to add any detail on that?
That's about it. The reason I'm asking is I know that the Ten Commandments are, of course, can be for the or are for the unconverted, but
Excuse me, offer what?
the
Okay, John.
unconverted.
Oh yeah, okay. Because you see that is what we just said there, and what I've come to realize, I think is very unusual when we say the Ten Commandments are for the unconverted, because most Christian churches, well, I won't say most Christian churches, but a certain number of Christian churches feel that the Ten Commandments are for them, although some, of course, say the Ten Commandments are done away, but that's another story. Okay, go ahead, Katrina.
But of course, we have Deuteronomy and other laws within the Bible, which gets very extensive. But I know they are for some of them that what was going on at the time. And then you look at Proverbs, and there's a lot of things in there that would be important. But Proverbs is a lot. So I was just thinking that if rules were created, would they just focus on the Ten Commandments and then add some Proverbs, or would they look at the other law
Okay.
chapters too?
All right. That's an excellent question. And actually, that's a question that I'm going to be dealing with and answering to a certain amount in the book, Transform Your Mind. Because the fundamental question behind this, and again, we could take at least another hour to answer this question, but the fundamental question is God interested in all human beings right here, right now? The reason I'm putting it that way is a lot of people think that, particularly in a church, that God's interested in my church or me as a Christian, and that the Muslims, those who believe in Hinduism or Islam, et cetera, God's not interested in them. Of course, Christians think that. Other people think that whatever religion or group they're in, God's interested in them, and to the exclusion almost of other people. So the question is God interested in all people? And as far as I'm concerned, the answer is yes. And the reason I say yes is I have to go back to the Garden of Eden. And in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve sinned, and God told them, look, you sinned, you're going out. I have to put you out. And I'm not going to explain all the reasons for that. But before he put them out, he did something incredible, because when they realized that they were naked, what did they do? They sewed together somehow some fig leaves. And God said, look, you're going out of the Garden of Eden, into Eden, but then Cain went east of Eden. So he went out of Eden into what we would call the world. God knew that out there, beyond the Garden of Eden, there was going to be a different life. There was going to be different needs. And God took off. Yeah, he replaced the fig leaves with coats of skins. Now, when you get into the Hebrew of those coats of skins, it's unbelievable, because those coats of skins, I don't have all the words here in my head, but actually one of those words means nakedness. You're dressed with nakedness. But then, of course, you have to understand what nakedness is. Nakedness is a type, when Adam and Eve were naked, it was a type of righteousness. It was a type of cleanliness before God. And we're not talking about hygiene. We're talking about the mind, talking about a clear mind, a proper judgment, et cetera, et cetera. So, and the other thing that these clothes represent is a way of life. See, the nudity of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden represented a way of life in conformity to the needs of the Garden of Eden. Now, once again, I could talk figuratively. When you're in a church, there is a way of life in function of being in the church. If you're a Christian, there's a way of life in function of being a Christian. That is not the same as if you're not a Christian, there is a way of life of not being a Christian that should bring peace and prosperity and everything that we need to live a decent life. So the point that I'm making here, or I'm trying to make, is that those coats of skins represent a way of life that God clothed Adam and Eve with in preparation for them leaving the Garden of Eden and living in another type of environment. And I'm talking here not a physical environment, I'm talking about a mental environment. I'm talking about a way of life environment. So the question becomes, what are those clothes of skins? What do they represent? And this is where Katrina talked about Proverbs and in particular the Ten Commandments. Who did God give the Ten Commandments to? Well, officially, he gave it to the nation of Israel. Right? Now, I say officially because the Ten Commandments already existed. They were in existence since creation. Adam and Eve sinned. They broke not all of the Ten Commandments, but certain of the commandments. So everything was there. And we discussed this last time. God told Cain, sin is at your doorstep. And the sin is the transgression of the law. So all of the law was there. So it was formalized for Israel. But that formalization, I would make 2 points here. The first one is that with Israel, there were the mixed multitude that came out of Egypt with Israel. The mixed multitude means non-Israelites. So what I'm saying is that the Ten Commandments were given directly to Israel, but they were given also to the mixed multitude. And that represents everybody, whether you're Gentile or Israel. Let's put it that way. Gentile or Israel, they are for everybody. That's the first point I would make. And the second point that I would make regarding the Ten Commandments is, were they given to a converted people or an unconverted people? They were the nation of Israel. The nation of God. Agreed. But were they converted? No way. In no way. I mean, they got the Ten Commandments and they immediately went and had an orgy. I'm laughing. I probably shouldn't laugh about it, but that shows the spiritual state of those people. They were unconverted. So, yes, the 10 Commandments are for the unconverted. What I would say is simply this: if today any nation or any people would just apply the last 6 of the 10 Commandments, nothing to do with God, the first 4, the last 6, we would have a much better state of families, of nations, and of everything else. We could almost empty our prisons if that would happen. Okay. So once again, without getting into all of the details, that's the importance of the 10 Commandments for the unconverted. And we're going to just run a little bit over time here, but I'm going to get to the Proverbs. Okay. The Proverbs, along with the book of Ecclesiastes, Psalms, Lamentations. No, actually, Lamentations comes a little bit later. But they were all written around the time of David and Solomon, as we know, because David and Solomon were the authors of those books, the Song of Songs, for instance. And those books were written about 1000 BC, before Christ. The prophets come around 600 BC. So that's another period. The point I'm making here is that Proverbs in particular, I'm not going to talk about the other books, Proverbs in particular is the last book written, I have to be very careful here because that talks about a way of life, specifically about how to live. Now, of course, the prophets talk about how to live as well. But what I'm saying is that Proverbs is the book of how to live, and it is a father talking to his son. That's how it opens. It says, a father's talking to his son. It's like a fireside chat. So what am I saying here? What I am saying is that the 10 Commandments are brief statements given to a nation, to a group, a whole group. The book of Proverbs, it's made up of advice, very practical advice given on a person-to-person basis. And what I would say is that is the end of, well, it's not the end in that sense of the Old Testament, but it's the end of the giving, the official giving of law. It's the end of giving a way of life. Remember that the Israelites also, they had all of the sacrifices, they had all of the temple ordinances, and a lot of national ordinances and whatever. When you get to Proverbs, and particularly later on, there's no more nation, there's no more national, there's no more priesthood. We don't need any of those laws. What we need is a way of life so that we can have peace and harmony on a family basis, on a neighborhood basis, on a city basis, and on a national basis. And that all starts, that's all, the details of all of that are in Proverbs. I don't know. Would you say that answers your question, Katrina?
Yes.
Okay, good. The book that I'm working on now, Transform Your Mind, Upgrade Your Life, is going to end with a whole section of how to improve mental health, and it's going to focus on anxiety. Because that's our number one problem today, anxiety and worry, and how to overcome that and how to help people come out of that. And we're going to give practical exercises. And those practical exercises are going to be based on Proverbs. So the Proverbs is going to be the base of that because that's what we need today. since we're all here and we've been here since the beginning, I'm going to bring it back to that very first question. The neshama is 5 areas. We need a purpose. People have lost their purpose in life. Young kids don't have a purpose. We're not giving them a purpose. We're not teaching them a purpose, and they don't know what to do with themselves anymore. The second thing is the way they function. We don't know how to function anymore. Again, I'm not going to get into it right here, but we don't know how to function. In other words, we don't know that we have, well, free will. We don't know how to behave. And we're not teaching that you've got to behave according to ethics. And we're not teaching that if you break the ethics, you are going to get the results of that, and that is a certain punishment, and that you can be rehabilitated and then forgiven. We're not teaching that way of functioning today. So that's the second area. The third area is reasoning. We're letting everybody reason. Anything goes in a debate now. It doesn't even have to be true. The reasoning is gone up the creek, so to speak, right now. So that's the third area. We've got to get back to critical thinking, and we're not teaching critical thinking anymore. And then the fourth area is socialization, family. We're not teaching family now. We're not teaching 2 genders now. We've just let everybody do their own thing. And the final area is rulership. And when I talk about rulership, is a proper maintenance of what we have in our responsibility. So we're not teaching that proper responsibility. There's another word that I'm using for rulership, and it won't come to me. It'll come in a minute. Management, that's the word. We're not teaching people to manage their lives, to manage their jobs, to manage their recreation, to manage their cars, to manage whatever they possess properly. So those 5 areas. So the way to transform your mind in order to increase your mentality, your mental stability, is to take those 5 areas and apply the proverbs in those areas. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to take a proverb and an area. And of course, each person is an individual. So they will have to decide, do I want to work on purpose? Do I want to work on reason? Do I want to work on socialization? And then within socialization, do I want to work on A, B, C, or D? And then they take that exercise and work with it. Again, I'm giving a very, very brief resume. There are other aspects to this as well, but that's what it works. But it comes down to this question here, Proverbs, because Proverbs are real. They are real, and they are directions that God gives us. Once again, it's not directions that we are thinking up or imagining, or what do you call this, ethics, local ethics, or whatever. This is real, and this is, when Christ said, I will give you rest. Of course, that's spiritual rest. But people in the world, people who are not necessarily spiritual, they can also have rest. They can have rest in their purpose because they've got a purpose. They can have rest in their critical thinking because they are thinking properly, and in all these other areas as well. Okay, we went a little bit over time. Thank you very much for coming. Unfortunately, I didn't get to meet Pat or Prudy. Maybe you introduce yourselves to John, and he will let me know. Otherwise, I'd really like you to just put in the chat, who you are, and if you do need something, or if you do want to chat, you can always write me an email at sam@theexplanation.com, sam@theexplanation.com, if you need something. I'll remind you also that this recording will be in the online course area available in a few days.